Welcome back. How are you doing? I hope you are doing well. So, today, workforce management meets operational excellence. Yes, it's true. My guest today is Marianne Rutz, founder and principal consultant at Rutz Consulting, but also a host of her own podcast called The Operational Excellence Show. Stay tuned for a great conversation.
Okay, here we are. Welcome back one more time to the WFM podcast. I'm very honored to have Marianne Rutz as my guest today. So I think you don't need an introduction, Marianne, because probably everyone knows you in this space
Thank
nowadays
you.
with your you are an expert in contact center operations, very well known based on the different, not only on your career path, but on the projects you lead today. You lead a consulting company as well. And I wanted to give you maybe a quick word on you to introduce yourself and say thank you to join this corner in the WFM community.
I'm so excited, Andre, because I think workforce management in the context of contact center management and tying it in then into the customer experience has has a huge value add, and it has changed so much, and I'm sure we're going to get into this. For
Hmm.
me, it is really an honor to speak to your audience because what you do fundamentally changes the delivery of a service. And I think sometimes that's not really recognized enough. I've been in the industry, contact center industry, for over 20 years. And I only fell into it. I never intended to stay. I worked a 9 month contract with Hertz Rent a Car at the time, and I got an opportunity. I'm a Swiss national. Hertz provided the visa for me to work in Ireland. We weren't part of the EU, we still are not, but there was no bilateral agreement, so the Swiss couldn't just easily travel. But there was one thing that I had as a unique selling point to the Irish and the Brits. That was I spoke four languages, and I couldn't find these people in Ireland. So there I was. I got a visa to travel to Dublin and to work on the setup of a contact center in Swords outside Dublin for Hertz Rent a Car. That was my starting point in the contact center industry.
Hmm.
And I've never left ever since. And I've also
Yeah,
never lived in Switzerland anymore until now, most recently, where we are moving back. But that's a different story. Yeah.
yeah.
And I
I
love the industry.
I can see, and you will. Everyone, our listeners will see that in the next 10 minutes very easily. I wanted to say like something that is very common is no one dreams to join this industry and become a career, but when many persons when they join, they fell in love throughout the process.
Yes.
I wanted
Yeah.
to touch a bit on that. On how was your process to fall in love with this career?
Um, Interestingly, I never thought highly of the contact center industry. I always said as a stopgap. And very many of my colleagues see it as a stopgap. When you get into the right organization and into the right environment, there is a massive opportunity from a careers point of view. So typically, people start as an agent. I started as a project manager because of the way Hertz worked at the time. But after a year, I had opportunities to either stay in project management and do everything from I got a green belt, but I could have gone for black belt. I could have Six Sigma. I could have gone for any kind of qualification in project management, or I could go down the leadership route, or I could go into the HR route. And HR for me was fascinating. I really wanted to do that. So not very many people know this. So I actually enrolled in a HR certification purely because I didn't understand the Irish employment law at the time. And very quickly I noticed, oh my God, I am fast paced, operational. I do things and then I ask for forgiveness afterwards. In HR, that doesn't work. So I did my certification. I knew the laws. I knew what you can do, what you cannot do from a performance management point of view, etc. But I well and truly said, I am operations. I do operations. And from there, I got a senior team lead. Then I got my first regional manager in the industry. Then I got to the operations director. And it was a very clearly designed career path with a lot of training and development opportunities, for which I'm really, really grateful. So if you are at the start of your career, there is career paths left, right, and center. And you probably wonder, why did I not mention workforce management? Do you know what? When we introduced workforce management, it was like, oh God, what the heck are we doing here? So,
I think it's good because I think the operational community got an amazing professional, and probably HR lost one. But in the end of the day, I think I
thank
agree with you.
you.
Like operational minded people, they are always focused on making sure we deliver. So
Yes, and
I
we
think
need to do it now. I would
yeah,
rather do it yesterday.
don't wait.
But I think, sometimes there's also a little danger there. We need to step back and maybe at times really reflect, is this really the right thing to do?
Mhm.
Because we are very action driven. That's yeah,
That's
no
true.
true. Yeah, yeah.
So you are someone that saw plenty of setups, different ways
Yeah.
of work operationally. I wanted to start with a question that start on a specific question that I normally ask every guest, which is try to define a workforce management within your own words. And I wanted to get your definition by someone that
For
saw
me,
so
yeah,
many versions
that's
of
a
it, probably.
great question. But for me, it's really having the right people at the right time with the right skill set, serving the right customer.
Yeah,
Workforce management to me is the tool where I can actually really steer the outcome of the day. And it's much more than shift planning. People think, yeah, I know when my shift's at. It started off with shift planning, in all fairness, but it's much, much more than that now.
and I think it's a very good point, and that ties well with the second question I was preparing on asking, which is we saw massive breakthroughs in the industry, on the contact center
Yes,
industry, like
yes,
from
yeah,
I still remember when email was not a thing, it started becoming
yes,
the thing.
yeah, exactly.
Now it's chat, like different cloud solutions that for guys that have been here a long time, they know like how the old phone systems actually worked and the in-house systems and how
Yes.
complex they were. How much do you think that the role, specifically on workforce management, of the WFM professional has evolved in the last few years?
Um, I think massively, because when workforce management was first introduced, and I'm showing my age here. Fine. We had it initially on an Excel spreadsheet. That was the start of workforce management. Who comes in when? And in a multilingual environment, what was really important was that we had always bilingual people on the various shifts, because otherwise our service that we provided to Swiss, German, Dutch, French customers, it fell over. They couldn't be served because those folks didn't speak English or didn't want to speak English. So it was important that we had the right people at the right time. This is how it started off. Then we started to look at what do people do? When are we busy? When do we need more people? It evolved really gradually into this massively complex building, whereby a good workforce manager and a good workforce management team points out when there is availability for training to happen, where we have got slots allocated for one-on-one and coaching sessions. That wasn't the case over 20 years ago. It was just, here is your day, do what you want. And you were wondering why you had calls in queue, why you had lost call percentages over lunch, because nobody realized, oh dear, it's 12 o'clock. So let's say 12 o'clock in Switzerland, which was 11 o'clock Irish time. But Swiss people just put the phone down, went to lunch
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock. I was like, oh, what happened here? So I think the value out of a good tooling and then the interaction. There was a time when workforce management kind of sat on the outer periphery of a team. Now you're very much part of the team. In the weekly team meetings, you are present, you are presenting the numbers. How many absences did we have? When were these people sick? What was the impact on the service delivery? That's the value add your teams as a support function bring to the in-house team,
Mhm.
but even greater so to the customer we serve. Just imagine if the calls are not answered. It's not just the one customer on the phone that's frustrated because he's in the queue. It's the family around that customer who sees that maybe the mother sits on the phone for 20 minutes trying to return a dress and she can't, and she gets off the phone and should have cooked dinner and the dinner isn't ready and the children come back from school. So if you don't provide a good service, you are not frustrating one person on the other end, you are frustrating a family. The children then go to school and they are stressed because it was a hassle at home, so you impact the class. We need to think bigger who we serve. It's not just that one person.
And I think one of the things I noticed changed, and probably you noticed as well, is it's a very human role. Meaning
Yes,
that even
yes,
though there is a
yeah,
lot of numbers, there is a lot of pragmatic decisions,
yeah,
call outs you need to do. In the end of the
yeah,
day, you have customers, clients on the other side that are human and they want
yes,
help. And the sole purpose of most of the contact center existing is because there are problems in the process, or they are leading with exceptions. And then you have
yeah,
the people working with you that we are trying to do the best to mitigate, like you said, right
yes,
skill set, right people,
yeah.
and right customer. I think that's sometimes forgotten, the right
Yes,
customer,
the
like,
right customer is really important. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's seeing that evolution is great. And I think one of the to add my 5 cents on your answer, which I think it was great, is one of the things I noticed is as we evolve, and you said everything started with that shift planning, like even for the professional within WFM is getting much more business oriented mindset, and they need
yes,
to have a much wider scope than what they used to have before. And that's probably one of the biggest
yeah,
changes compared to the traditional
yeah.
workforce
And I think that is
roles.
it's a very valid point, because when we go in and we do a deep dive in a company when we look at what they have got, and very often the first audit or the asset review shows actually we could probably save you one or two people's salaries if you were right staffed at any one time. I'll give you an example. We delivered a piece of work into a retail company, and they were open. They pride themselves to be open all Sunday and accept calls. Guess what? From 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, nobody actually phoned. And I was like, why would you even have people sitting there? Oh,
Yeah,
well, they may be doing something else. I was like, show me the evidence. But
yeah,
because it was a sales team, the sales team didn't do anything else. They just sat there waiting for the calls to come in. That's a cost which is dead.
yeah.
It doesn't add any value to anybody. And it gives the sales advisor, a great afternoon, can have his cup of tea and maybe now watch the football. And if there is a call coming in, they take it quickly, but likelihood is the call doesn't come in. So we
Very
changed that
true.
pattern. But only workforce management identified that, when you can see that this is happening.
Yeah. So Ruth, so Marianne, let me just try to move roots here and try to adjust. So I mentioned in the beginning that you have your own show
Yes,
called the
yes,
Operational Excellence Show.
yeah.
What's behind the creation of that podcast and that show? Because I have to say, so I discovered that recently, and I started listening, and it's already on my favorite list. So every time there's a new episode,
Thank
I
you.
try, when I'm commuting home or picking up my
Yeah.
daughter, it's one of the things I normally listen to. But I'm very curious on what was behind the creation of this show, because you know a lot, and I think this is connected with knowledge sharing as well. But I wanted to really give the opportunity for you to share what is the
So
behind the scenes on the creation.
podcasting to me is an absolute passion project. And it started off, I was very ill a couple of years ago. And when I was lying in bed or I was lying in and getting my chemotherapy, I was listening to podcasts. And I was thinking, what a great opportunity, just learn or listen and just do it at your own time when you feel you are there and you can absorb it. You don't need to like a TV program at the time. You needed to kind of watch it when it was live and then it was gone. So I thought, well, one day I will do a show on contact centers. And as time moved on and I started my own business, I thought, well, now is the opportunity to actually really hammer the message home. Contact centers are here to stay. The people are delivering great service. There is so much value add. So I took a decision over Christmas. I started in January after I had kind of thought about what I would call it and how I would go about it. And I didn't actually realize at the time that not only does it give me a voice, it opened an opportunity for engagement. So there's not a show where we wouldn't get an email back or a phone call or a comment on LinkedIn where people say, oh, that resonated with me. And it's purely a way for me to give back and share my brownies. There is enough out there for everybody to learn and to move their own endeavors forward. We don't need to hold on and think, oh, I know this and I cannot share this with anyone, because guess what, someone else knows it as well. But if we go out and share it, then we have a much greater impact on our employees and on the customer, and what we call customer experience. And I love it. So it's still a passion project. It has evolved by way of technology and by guests that we now have. And sometimes when I listen back to my very first one, I say, oh my God, did I really say that? But it's a fantastic journey and I love it.
It's a journey, and we are starting our own on our side, and I have to say your journey is a bit longer. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was checking, you have a bit over 120
Yes, yeah, we are now there.
episodes.
Yes, exactly. We
And I
have
have to
passed.
say
Yeah,
that it's amazing to see the consistency of you always have a new team, a new way that is interesting and appealing, something that is like trending. So it's really refreshing to have that.
and I think what you just said, the consistency is important. If you browse podcasts, there are so many out there that did maybe 5 or 10 episodes and then nothing.
Yeah.
So, and I have to admit, sometimes I think, oh, it's hard work. It's hard work, and it is. It takes time. Sourcing your guest takes time. Having an initial conversation with the guest, then recording, then editing. It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
But if you stick to it and you consistently produce the good content, then you have a great tool. I can tell you, there's not a conversation that I'm having with a prospecting client. They give me an example or a challenge to have, and I can now go and say, oh, let me think, I have a podcast. I'm going to send you a link, and I can elaborate what you could be doing. Hey, now I have a marketing tool that I didn't even think of when I started off.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. So let me challenge you a bit, and this is all probably putting you in a bit of a tough position, but you did many episodes.
Yes.
You probably spoke with multiple guests, and I don't
Yeah.
want to pick on the guests, but I wanted to. Was there any specific subject or theme you covered where you learned something that you like didn't know, or just a different perspective on something that you probably had a different opinion, that was kind of rewarding to have that conversation that you could share?
Yes, there's one, and it was with Daniel Ort. Those folks who know Daniel in your space, Daniel is the CCXP customer experience guy. And we had a conversation. What comes first, the customer experience or the customer service? And the sparks are just flying. I love it. It was like, I thought I was right. I am customer service, blah, 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 blah. And he was, no, customer experience first. And the outcome was, which is quite interesting, that after that podcast with him, and I can't think of the episode just now, but I will find out, I enrolled in Daniel's training for CCXP to get CCXP certified. And I was like, oh my God, I think he was right.
Amazing
So
moment.
that was a really, really good episode.
It's one of the early ones. I think I didn't
Yes.
listen to that one, but I will
Yeah.
listen to that one.
It's one of the early ones. Yeah. But that gave me the confidence to actually also go a little bit of confrontational at times. It's not a bad thing as long as you do it with the right intention and, shall we say, I will call it a loving approach. I respect what my guests are doing, and my guests respect what I'm doing. And then that conversation is driven by the desire to demonstrate a different viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, that's refreshing, and I think I have to say, those conversations, when they are done with that intent, which is providing the perspectives, clashing that spark, I think it's super even for the audience and people that position themselves up, like they will be fighting the fight with you along with the conversation.
Yes,
So
exactly.
That's great. I wanted to shift a bit now from the show and connect on. We spoke about this before on our kind of prep session, like you said.
Yeah.
You mentioned this before, so you went through kind of a tough time.
Yes.
So you beat cancer, so kudos to that, and I think it's an amazing story. But we spoke about this, and I asked you, like, did that change your perspective? Someone that's so connected to service, someone that's so connected to like operational excellence, did that change the way you see operational excellence, or did that affect it somehow on how you see the world?
Um,
And you shared with me a few stories, but I wanted
yes,
to see if you don't
yeah,
mind sharing with the audience
yes.
as well.
So I think what it did, I grew up in a family home that was very much in the public eye. My dad was the minister of a very small parish in Switzerland, and he hammered home to us from a very young age: it's soup, soap, and salvation. You feed somebody, you wash somebody, and you let them sleep, and then you preach what you need to preach to these people. And I always said, yeah, okay, fine. And as I went through my career, this, you know, it was always present. When I got ill and I had so much time to reflect, I was happy with my job. I was operations director with Capita at the time. I loved the brand, I loved the company, I loved the client I lived with, and I was not prepared to step away. And to get a cancer diagnosis 3 days before I married my husband, it was like the rug was like just pulled under my feet. It was just gone. I was like, oh my God. The first thing I remember saying to Kevin was, do you still want to go ahead with the wedding? And he's in the military, because he just stood there stoically, white faced and taking it all in. And he just said to me, who do you think I am? And okay. So we got married 3 days later. Nobody knew about the diagnosis except our closest friends, because we had already people flying in from everywhere, and we just wanted to have a great time. And we had a brilliant time. And then I went and created a project plan for my cancer journey. Looking back, I'm thinking that was the only way I knew how to deal with it, but it gave me certain anchor points. Going back to soup, soap, and salvation, I first needed to create something that I could hold on to and that would keep me safe before I was even open to deal with the diagnosis and speak to the doctors and listen what they had to say and agree to a treatment plan. When I went out to create my own business, that became my main driver. I'm sharing first. I used the term earlier, sharing my brownies. I'm sharing first. I'm giving people, listen what they really need. I help them to see what they already have before I go and say, and now you need to do this, this, and that. And that approach has really paid off. It's one of them. Whilst I always kind of knew it, I never proactively used it until I was right in the thick of it, and I would not have known what to do, really.
So that plan, and I think you just said something that is interesting, is many times we do it completely
Yeah.
unconscious, and
Yes. Yeah.
having that conscious enables and boosts the outcome probably.
Absolutely. And it allows a more, shall we say, more authentic connection.
Mhm.
It allows this really personal engagement without having to give yourself up as a person.
Mhm.
It's just this, okay, how can I help you? What do you need now most? And then you take it from there. What we have done as part of the organization, then the company that really was there for us was Maggie's Cancer Care. And Maggie's Cancer Care is a very small British charity in comparison, for example, to Macmillan. But we now have an opportunity, because it's so close to my heart, to support this charity. Just the way we deliver business and we do business. And all my clients know that. They also know why I'm supporting that charity and no other one. And it's extremely powerful. It just gives you that extra edge, if you wish.
Yeah, that connection, it's just beautiful to
Yeah.
hear and just to see that in practice. Thank you for sharing, Marianne. It's really great to hear that. um so if you allow me, and now that we had a more inspiring moment, I wanted to move a bit back to something we were speaking before. So we were
Yeah.
speaking about the wave of new channels and how the industry
Yes.
evolved, and I see still many people getting stuck on transformation. Digital transformation is a challenge, is
Yeah.
something we are going through. Um, there is, I don't know what's the right or wrong approach. I think probably you said it before, the better is just to take action and
Yeah.
learn with it and then take action. But I wanted to pick your knowledge and experience to get like your thoughts on what risks do you see that either no one is speaking or are not
Mhm.
spoken enough in regards to this digital transformation. And then the second part of the question is, what role do you think specifically workforce management will have
Mhm.
on that transformation? But maybe we can start with the
Yeah,
first part.
let's call out the risks. What I see nearly in every company we go into and look at is one of the biggest risks they have got. They do not follow a diligent governance model. And I know that sounds very harsh. Everybody tells me, yeah, but we do have meetings. Fine. Show me the evidence. What do you want? Meeting notes, maybe? No. I want the action plan that goes with it. I want to know who takes action by when, what's the outcome, what's the change,
The
what's the
accountability.
cost. And they're going, oh, let me think, we don't really do that. Yes, governance and accountability. And people don't like it because that's on them. Accountability is on me. I can sweet talk a room for an hour. If I then not take the action that I am assigned or that I committed to myself, that's even worse, and I'm not doing it, and I'm not demonstrating the output a week later, that hour was a waste of time.
Mhm.
So that's the first risk that I really see nearly everywhere, and people don't really look. They don't like the word risk. Even
Mhm.
CEOs don't like the word risk. Even I ask them, "Can I see your risk log?" Oh well, they think it's like secret. Nobody should know that they have risks. Well, every business has risks. Don't give me that.
Yeah.
But the risk log is there to demonstrate if there's a risk called out and you try to fix it and it didn't work, you can at least pride yourself in saying you have identified the risk. If you don't have one, you can't even say that. So
Mhm.
God help you if it all goes pear-shaped. And the second one that I still see, and that astounds me, there's no excuse, business continuity planning. So we had 9/11, we had the financial crash, we had the COVID pandemic. You would think by now every company has at least an outline of a business continuity plan. Even
Mhm.
if it just says on day one, 50% or 100% of our people work from home. These are their addresses, these are their whatever, the basics of the basics. And there are still companies that don't have it.
Mhm.
And they just go along and go with the flow, as they would probably say. And I'm going to say the flow isn't good enough anymore.
Mhm.
I'm a customer. I have an expectation. I want to get in touch with you over phone, email, chat, whatever it may be. Don't you dare closing the phone line just
Yeah.
because you haven't got a business continuity plan.
Mhm. Can I ask you a provocative question? So,
Yes.
where do you think that the biggest problem is? Is it lack of commitment on being there for the customers and make it happen, or is lack of planning is not the right word, but process and the planning behind it is just not doesn't have the right sponsorship, which leads to that crumble down.
I think it's the latter. I still think the sponsorship must take more responsibility in that. Because,
Hmm.
in all fairness, what should at least be there is a working group that constantly meets. Again, we're going tying this back to governance, that meets once every 6 weeks and talks about what if scenarios.
Hmm.
And this what if scenario can be you know, in Switzerland, in the mountains, it can be a snowstorm. In Florida, it could be a tornado of some sorts, or a hurricane approaching in Puerto Rico. You know, these things happen. They are not new.
Hmm.
And with our forecasting models across the world, and I'm talking from weather to epidemics to pandemics, we can actually see them coming. So why
Hmm.
would we sit here waiting until the train hits us if we had an opportunity to prepare?
Yeah,
And there's a
there
cost
is a lot of
attached, you
yeah, there is
know?
a lot of mentality issues sometimes. I see that
Yeah,
times to times people like I see guys that are doing great on that front, but others that
yes.
just
Hmm.
they are like waiting for something that they don't know exactly what it is, with as an excuse to kind of like the reason why we're not
Yeah,
doing is because we are waiting on something. We don't know exactly what we are waiting on, but that will help us.
yeah,
So it's like the chicken and the egg position. Uh, to the second part of the question, so
yes.
what role do you think specifically to our audience here that WFM plays in that future?
A big role, because I love the fact that I can turn around to my workforce manager and say, can you model 3 if scenarios for me? Scenario A, B, and C, that I can see what channels can I open? Should I open all the channels? How many people do I absolutely need? What would be nice to have? That kind of, what communication needs to happen? The what if scenarios that spark communication. What do I need to say to my advisors? Why am I changing their shifts? What's the rationale? What am I asking them to do? Am I asking them to pledge for extra hours, for example? Are there people that really happily do more that so that others can take time out to do whatever they need to do? I think that that level of planning and that level of conversation is only possible if I know what these scenarios look like and how they serve my team best, but how they serve the business best and how they serve the customers best. It's a completely different engagement and conversation because I'm talking from the know. I know what will happen.
Mhm.
That changes the conversation completely.
Completely. And I think what you just said is a perfect segue to one of our very initial points when we were describing the role and the evolution, which is we were saying about that wider scope on the business side and starting from just shift planning to this that you just described.
Yeah.
That's like a very simple way to grasp that evolution and
Yes.
the importance
Yes. Yeah.
it has. And
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think there is just a layer that probably you would cover, which is many times there are multiple layers business wide. When we just wear the business hat, you have the financials, you have the customer like retention, customer happiness, and when you tie all of that together, the story becomes so powerful too.
Absolutely. And I think
And
that's the opportunity that we need to see.
mhm.
That is a gift. And whether or not you take it as an ops director, that's absolutely up to you. But if you don't, you're losing out.
Yeah, in the end of the day, it goes back to accountability on your decision and
Yeah,
owning the decision.
yeah, agreed.
um Getting close to the end, but I still wanted to get more from the knowledge you have, and I wanted to get your references. So who inspired you the most, and why?
Oh, it's a very good question. I think I said that earlier. Growing up in a very close knit community, the person that inspired me the most and always encouraged me, well, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's fact, is my father. And I still sometimes think, I just wish I could ask him. When it comes to business development and career, there is a guy. His name is BJ Kennedy. He was my guest on the operational podcast show. He was the first manager, I would probably say, who really, shall we say, he recognized my talent and he
Hmm.
absolutely put me on the path of success. And to date, we are friends now, but I can lift the phone and say, BJ, I'm stuck. What would you
Hmm.
do? What's your perception? And I think these relationships, the mentorship, they are really important. When you're open to grow personally, I need
Hmm.
to be open to take PJ's feedback or, get a different perspective. And it's
Hmm.
always feedback and it's always meant to help me, not to push me back. That's a mindset.
Yeah.
If I look at feedback at that way, then I'm winning. So these relationships, but they also need cultivating. Think about it. BJ managed me 20 years ago. That's how long we go back, right?
Long
So
journey.
they need to be cultivated. You need to put the effort in to keep the relationship alive.
Hmm. I agree. And I think you said a very important story. Like we all have mentors in our different
Yeah,
stages of life,
yeah,
and that cultivating is important. If he's someone that actually impacted you or helped, sometimes we realize that after, okay, that person was really pivotal in where I
yes,
am today. I think it's a piece of advice for everyone listening, but I think cultivating that relationship probably
Yeah.
would be the best,
Yeah.
because it's something that will probably down the line, like you just described, be a good friendship.
Yeah.
um, Final question that I have for you, is any book you or any resource you would recommend our audience to read that will help inspire them on the journey based on where they are today?
I read a lot of books, and the one that I really love is Michael Hyatt's Your Best Year Ever. So
Hmm.
Michael Hyatt is really a leadership guru, and he wrote a number of books. But that book is every end of the year, as I prepare for my next business year, I take it out again. And
As a
okay,
refresher.
as a refresher, now is the time to think, what am I doing next year? How can I better my business, my bottom line, my top line? That's important. People need to look at both ends, and if they run their own businesses, there's a top line that you need to bring in by way of revenue. There's a bottom line, that's your profit, and in
Mhm.
between you want to create a life. And I don't mean necessarily take your laptop and work by the beach, but if this is what you want to do, then you need to plan for it. Otherwise
Mhm.
it's not happening. I love that book. I think it's one of them straight talk books that you just take every chapter, do the exercises, and you have your plan basically.
That's a perfect guide for the time of the year we are. Normally,
Time
everyone
of the year is just right. This is yeah,
it's just right.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So I think the timing couldn't be better. Marianne, was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Well,
I
thank you
think for
very much
everyone
for
that is
having me.
listening, I think they got a bit of the stories you have to share. Any final words so we can close today this episode?
I would say think about your employees and your customers as one entity and put them first, and you're winning.
Amazing, amazing way to end. Thank you so much,
Thank you
and
very much for having me.
have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to WFM. This podcast is made and produced by André Leitão, Bilge Hentolun, Doug Carsteton, Gonçalo Gomes, and Kim Paz. If you like this show, don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues. Visit our website, wefm.com, to find more exclusive interviews and WFM content. See you next time. All rights reserved.